Tony Broome Ministries presents this Bible talk from 1 Samuel chapter 18. David had just gotten through with a slaughter of Goliath. Everybody was so happy that somebody was willing to come and take on this big Philistine giant. David killed Goliath with a sling and a stone. Saul the king was so happy, and everybody in Saul's camp were rejoicing because David had killed Goliath. Jonathan, Saul's son, he was so taken away with David that he stripped himself of his garments and his bow and all the prince's stuff that he had, and he put them upon David. So here, David had been anointed by Samuel, even though he was not king yet, but he had been anointed to be Israel's great king. Saul was still reigning. Here comes Goliath. Nobody was man enough to take him on. And here comes shepherd boy David. Kills Goliath. And now Saul sees David, takes him into himself, and Jonathan says, here's a guy that I really love. The scripture says several times in this one chapter, David behaved himself wisely in all his ways. This little talk is called Behave Yourself. We find ourselves in situations now in our nation and countries of the world that we thought we'd never face. We see desolation, destruction, uncertainty, doubt, and confusion. Some people are angry, and that keeps coming up. They're angry. I say, angry at what? Angry at who? Who can you blame? I suppose they can blame anyone. So many people blame the president. They blame their teacher. They blame their parents. They blame a virus. They blame a disease. They blame a handicap. We know that this happens because people just don't know what to do. In case you don't know what to do, how about blaming yourself? If you're going to blame anybody, let's blame yourself. Well, David, he could have said, you know what? Saul's a rascal. He's turning away from God. He disobeyed the Lord. I'm anointed as king. I should be able to take over. But he didn't do that. Saul put David over the men of war. And the scripture said that David behaved himself wisely. This thing just kept getting me the last few days. Hear one talk. People say things will get better. Some people say, I don't know. And so there's uncertainty. How should we behave ourselves in adverse circumstances? It's easy to behave yourself well when everything is going well. Birds are singing. Soft, gentle breeze is blowing. Got a little jingle in your pocket. Buying most anything you want. It's easy to behave yourself well when you got pretty dresses and nice suits and good clothes. Everybody likes you and everything's going well. Career and job, kids and grandkids. Everybody seems to be doing pretty much okay. It's easy to behave ourselves. And we even make bold statements when things are going well. We say things like, I will trust in the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. We like to quote verses like that from the Psalms. And that's true. We should trust God at all times, but actually what we're thinking about is the good times we're having right then. It's so easy to trust God during the good times. But what about when things are not going so well? What about, as a matter of fact, when things are going bad? It's not too easy to trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not into thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. That's a wonderful passage from Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. But this means behaving yourself not just well when things are good, but behave yourself wisely no matter what. So here's David. Now he's in the king's palace. He's not king yet, but he's in the king's palace, and he's put over the men of war. And he goes out and behaves himself wisely. So Here comes the ladies. They're dancing. Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s. Aha, Saul said, did you hear that? David has been ascribed 10,000s, and to me they have only put thousands. He becomes jealous and indignant. In fact, the scripture said Saul eyed David from that day forward. He didn't look at him the same as he did before. Before, he said, man, this guy's handsome. He's good looking. He defeated Goliath. He wrought a great victory in Israel. God made a salvation celebration that day. I'm going to take this young man to be with me. He saw him as a gentleman of victory and celebration. And now he sees him as a threat. What can he have more but the kingdom also? So now David is a threat to him. He becomes like his enemy. And so Saul removed him from him and he demotes him. He put him over a company of 1,000. David could have said, you know what? I knew there was something wrong with this guy. I'm just going home. He could have complained. He could have stirred up a conspiracy against Saul. He could have done all sorts of things. But you know what the scripture says? David behaves himself wisely in all his ways. It ends up that he becomes the king's son-in-law, marrying Michal, which was a mess in itself. But anyway, the scripture gets to the end of 1 Samuel 18, and it says he behaves himself more wisely than all the servants of Saul. In the New Testament, Paul writes to Timothy. 1 Timothy chapter 3, starting about verse 14. I'm writing to you these things, hoping to come to you shortly. But if I tarry long, that you may know how you ought to behave yourself in the house of God, which is the church of the living God, the pillar and ground of the truth. By all means, behave yourself in the church, not just in the church house, but as being part of the church, as being part of God's kingdom, to behave yourself well. When we are in Babylon, when we are in trouble, when we are in Egypt, spiritually speaking, when we are in sickness, disease, virus, when we are in adverse circumstance, we can still behave ourselves wisely. Recently, preachers have been saying, now is the time for us to shine. Well, I'd like to say it like this. Now is the time for us to let Jesus shine. There's a song that's written like it. Chorus goes something like, shine, Jesus, shine. Fill this earth with the Father's glory. Blaze, Spirit, blaze. Set our hearts on fire. It's time for us to let Jesus shine. He said, I am the light of the world. And then when he got ready to leave, he said, you are the light of the world. A city that's set on a hill cannot be hid, but everybody can see the light. You do not take a lamp, put it under a bushel, but you put it on a lampstand, so all who are in the house can see the light. Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. It's time for us to shine and let Jesus shine. We are to behave ourselves in all situations just like Jesus would do. He is our example, and we follow him. This has been a Bible talk entitled, Behave Yourself. So behave yourself until we talk to each other again. This has been a production of Tony Broome Ministries.